Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
That Jeff is one heck of a guy, that's all I can say. This is the BJ Show. BJShow.co is our official web address. You can find out all sorts of stuff about the show. We put the show up every day in 3 segments. John does an excellent job of putting a recap on where you can find these things. Matter of fact, he posts this on Instagram, puts a lot of different stuff out there. And by the way, you do an excellent job on your Instagram post of recapping our show.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, we have a special guest who I'm going to call right now. I'm going to hit the magic button here on the little board, and hopefully we should hear a dial tone here, which we do. And we will have, hopefully, if the equipment works, Peggy McGaugh come on with us and tell us about what's going on with...
Good morning.
Peggy, it's Brad.
Yes.
from Brad and John. You hear me okay?
I do. Do you hear me?
I hear you just fine. Now, I have to tell you, John is here with me, not in the studio, and that's one of the problems. So he can't interact with you, although he's listening to everything you say. So be careful what you say. But so it's essentially going to be me doing the interview. Now, John contacted you, and the reason we've talked about you before, were your ears burning when we were talking about you?
I'm sorry I missed that, but I did appreciate the clip that was sent. So now I know what you did say, yes.
Now, first off, little background. You are a current state rep in what part of the state?
I'm in the northwest part of the state, Carroll, Livingston, Lynn, and a portion of Ray counties.
Do you have that stretch of I-35 up toward Des Moines?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
I'm more east of there.
Okay, you're east of there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some legislation that you've come out with, which John finds fascinating. And tell us about what's going on with this.
Well, I appreciate John finding that fascinating because I know he's an election watchdog. And basically, having served over 30 years as the Carroll County Clerk, I bring in that institutional knowledge with me, and the Missouri Association of County Clerks and Election Authorities, rely on me to carry their legislation and many times clean up some of the things that have passed most recently. Good things for the most part, but things that when one, line changes, something else, it moves it. So first of all, this started out with a change in the filing dates because the April filing dates ended up being the week of Christmas. And that was a real problem with the school districts and the cities and such. So this started out with making sure that particular thing got moved. And then the clerks and the election authorities have been, watching what happens in not only our state, but in the nation, with elections being so volatile. And they wanted to make sure that they and their election judges and families were safe. So this bill adds threatening to harm or engage in conduct reasonably calculated to harass or alarm an election official or a member of one's family, attempting to pressure an election official to violate a provision of election law, doxing an election official or a member of one's family will now be a Class 3 election offense. If the prohibited activity results in death or bodily injury to an election official or a member of the official's family, the offense shall be a Class B felony. So as you know, there are 4 election offenses in Missouri statutes, so with varying degrees of misdemeanors. So in other words, the first charge would be in the division of the Class 3, but if it involves death, then it would be a Class B felony.
Now, let me ask you something on this, Peggy. Is this something? I mean, we've heard all about the crazy stuff that's going on, that happened in Atlanta and in Georgia and other states. Has this been a real problem in Missouri so far?
Well, coincidentally, as you pointed out, the very week that I presented this bill in my committee, Elections and Elected Officials, that I'm the chairman of, our Secretary of State was swatted, and you did a good definition of that, in his very home here in Jefferson City. Now, that was scary enough. But yes, I was a female election authority that would stay after the election at night, small town, middle of the square, finish up things, walk to my car alone. There are vulnerable people out in the counties that could very well be, and right now it's mostly chatter and talk and threatening, but I don't know of a current Missouri election authority that's actually been to the point they needed to press charges. But yes, the Secretary of State example was a perfect example of why we needed to get this in the statute.
Now, I'd imagine under the law, these were areas that were not covered. In other words, if like, let's say let's say theoretically, I didn't like an election official and I would call her up or call him or her up and harass them and stuff like that, that would just be normal police, that they would call me up and say, hey, we understand you're harassing so-and-so. That would just be handled as a normal harassment type of thing, and this elevates it, essentially?
It does elevate it. In the Class 3 election statute, there are already 11 provisions, one of them being making use of or threatening to make use of any force, violence, or restraint. However, we needed to make sure that the election judges and the people that the election authorities hire, many of them are elderly women out at the precincts, and they felt a little bit vulnerable out there with perhaps in small areas, no police presence very close.
Interesting. Now, this is how far has this gotten? Is this along the legislation, the legislative track? Where are you at right now with this bill?
I have one more hearing. It's been third read. It will be third read soon, and we will have it on its way to the Senate. And I do have a Senate sponsor. That's Senator Sandy Crawford. She's done a lot of good things for the election authorities as well. She's a real friend, and she understands elections. And I know that there are people on the Senate side that also realize that elections have changed, and we want to make sure that our professionals that run them are safe.
We're speaking with Peggy McGaugh, who is a state rep who has currently a new piece of legislation that protect essentially election officials. Peggy, I'm going to finish up with one thing. I'm going to ask you a nosy question. Do you think there is funny business going on in elections in Missouri? We haven't had that much accusation here. I know if you go back in history, there was the thing with with Franks. What was his first name? Do you know who I'm talking about? Who was a state rep who actually got
Representative Bruce Franks. I served when I came in 2018. I served one term with him. Yes.
Right. If you remember that whole crazy story, they redid that election because of the fact that they did prove there was election funny business going on. For the most part, do you think that there is funny business going on with elections around the state?
Well, people will be people. Candidates sometimes, can get riled up about the smallest of things. I think Missouri has the best election authorities and election laws to help them. So anytime they feel they need a boost in a statute or something that would make it even tighter, I'm happy to help, and I appreciate everything that they do. But, they also are at the mercy of the people they hire out in the precincts and the polls. So, could they mistakenly hire a bad actor? We don't know. So we need to protect than all.
Human nature is an interesting thing at times, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Peggy, thank you very much. Is there any contact information if people want to get in touch with you, ask you some questions, maybe help you push this through? Any kind of contact information you can throw out for us?
Certainly. My email address at the Capitol is peggy.mcgaugh@house.mo.gov, and the spelling of my last name is McGaughh.
Peggy, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I know that John's going to send you the clip of this interview, and you can have it for your own. You can cherish it and put it in your memory book and go, oh, my, that interview was so great, right?
I will cherish it. Thank you so much for having me.
Peggy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great.
Well, John, what do you think?
It was good. Yeah, it was a good explanation.
Yeah.
I don't know other than the kind of pushback that you gave on Monday in terms of, well, are we really elevating one group of people over another? I'm not sure legislatively who would oppose this legislation.
Well, she mentioned, and the thing she mentioned about Jay Ashcroft, how do we ever know what the intent of the swatting was about? Was it because of the fact that he was the chief election official, being the Secretary of State, or was it the fact that he's running for a higher position, so to speak, of being the governor? You know what I mean? I mean, who the heck
I do
knows?
know, yeah, and I mean to be able to interpret intention in something like that is impossible.
Right. Okay. Bunch of things to talk about. Did you hear the Larry David interview that Chris Wallace did on CNN?
No, is that why you brought up Larry David earlier?
Oh, my God.
I haven't heard. I love Larry David. What's this about?
Let me see if I can find it here real quick. I heard this earlier this morning.
And why was Chris Wallace talking to Larry David?
I don't know. Here, let me see. Right. Here we go. Okay, this is on videos. This is on. I'm gonna just pull it up here and see if I can play it. Hold on a minute. Okay, it's gonna give an ad.
Candy Crush All Stars tournament. Sweet. Divine. Just got serious.
I'm running the ad. I'm sorry. We gotta have the ad, right? Okay. Here we go.
I'm back with Chris Wallace. Chris, I have to tell you, I am very jealous because I'm a huge, huge fan of this next person because you just talked to Curb Your Enthusiasm's Larry David about the election. Let's listen.
So, how much has the whole 2020 election and everything that has flowed from it pissed you off?
Oh, I mean, you can't go a day without thinking about what he's done to this country because he's such a little baby that he's thrown 250 years of democracy out the window by not accepting the results of an. I mean, it's so crazy. He's such a sociopath. He's so insane. He just couldn't admit to losing. And we know he lost. He knows he lost. And look how he's fooled everybody. He's convinced all these people that he didn't lose. He's such a sick man. He's so sick.
Okay, we'll stop it at that. Do you think Larry David has an opinion about Donald Trump?
Wow. Now, first of all, this doesn't change the fact that I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. It doesn't change how I feel about Larry David's work. But but also he's in real life, like not just on Curb Your Enthusiasm or as a celebrity, but he's like actually come out as he's been a big liberal for many years. Like he was close to all the politicians in California. Like it shouldn't surprise us that he's saying this about Donald Trump.
Well, okay, not defending Donald Trump. I'll preface that by saying I look back and I think to myself, okay, let me think back on Donald Trump's presidency. Okay, how many wars that we're involved in? Answer, right? None. Was the economy good? Yes, it was great, except for the last, with
COVID, yeah.
Yeah, the COVID thing, okay? Was there all sorts of problems? Were we having problems? I mean, once again, his son-in-law, Kushner, who went into the Middle East and negotiated all these Abraham Accords and essentially got all the warring nations to essentially like each other and put it into an agreement. I'm going like, okay, I don't quite understand the whole crazy thing. And from the get-go, do you remember what was it, the Saturday after the inauguration, when a very famous person by the name of Madonna stood on a stage and with a group of women in the audience said that she was going to, didn't she say she was going to blow up the White House?
Yeah, you mean after Trump was inaugurated?
Yes, going back in 2017.
Yeah, but that's okay, Brad, because that's
right.
You know what we were doing in that case? Madonna was literally pedestalized, wasn't she, Brad?
Here she goes with his.
She was literally pedestalized.
Okay.
And if you are an angry woman, it goes to different degrees here. But if you are an angry liberal woman, the only thing better than being that is an angry trans. So an angry make-believe woman is the only thing that's pedestalized more often than an angry liberal woman.
Okay, was it the headline? Was it the day or a couple days after the inauguration when it was either in the Washington Post or the New York Times where the headline was, "Now the impeachment begins," or something to that effect?
And also this underscores the fact, Brad, that when George W. Bush was elected, Democrats in Congress said that they would refuse to accept the results of the election because there was too much fraud.
Well, yes. I mean, but see, the crazy thing for me is, first off, when you hear these, this is like one of the talking points that all the Democrats are talking about, that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Okay, first off, go back and retake your Civics 101 class. I don't even think they teach civics anymore in school. Do they, John? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, maybe in the high school level, they probably just roll it into 1 week of social studies.
Okay, we're not a democracy. That's the one thing that everybody keeps
True,
missing.
we are not a democracy.
We're not a democracy. Technically, we're more of a constitutional republic, and that's the form of our government. Matter of fact, if you look up on Wikipedia, I'll look that up in the break. But
we're a representative republic.
Yeah, representative republic, constitutional republic, that same kind of thing. Okay. I see, it's things like this that I just go like, okay, like Larry David becoming unglued. And here's the thing for me. Larry David is, and you like him, you have a positive opinion because of his what he's done through the years, his comedy. Wasn't he like a writer once upon a time on Saturday Night Live? Wasn't he like?
He was, in the 80s, yeah.
Right. Okay. You like his comedy, you like his shows he produces. Okay. So what makes him an authority on politics? Okay.
Yeah, nothing at all.
Right. So
but no more than you and I. Not to interrupt, Brad, but nothing more than you and I are experts on comedy.
I agree, but Chris Wallace isn't interviewing you or I. You know what I mean?
But also, you know why? Because throughout the country today, versions of the Brad and John show, and let's face it, there's no other version of us like there, but hundreds of other shows this morning are talking about this interview. That's why.
Well, I guess the thing that bothers me is that, is Trump the world's best guy? No. Is he being persecuted in the court system? I think even the hardcore Democrats would probably say, yeah, maybe. You know what I mean? You and I, you look at the stuff he's gone through, constantly being in court, and essentially they're now calling, I don't know if this is a term in the dictionary, but it probably will be. You know how they always add the new words to the dictionary? Lawfare, essentially.
Yeah, I first heard that on the Annie Fry show with Will Scharf.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea of being warfare is, you go after somebody with military weapons, with bazookas and machine guns and bombs and stuff like that. Lawfare meaning you go after them with the courts. You tie them up in the courts. And once again, the interesting part of this for me is that if this were not Donald Trump, and go back and look at the situation, because I've heard some of these people say, well, look what happened in Atlanta. A bunch of the people that were charged as co-conspirators have pled guilty, are taking a plea. Well, you know why they did? Because they don't have any money to defend themselves.
They can't afford to fight the charge.
Right.
Sure.
They can't afford to hire an attorney. I mean, I can tell you a situation that I was in years ago, and I called an attorney and I told him the situation and I sent him some documents. He says, "Oh, this is a slam dunk case." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, I can win this case for you very easily." And I go, "Okay, fine." He says, "Send me a $50,000 retainer." And I'm going like, well, guess what? I don't have $50,000. Well, good luck. And that's the thing that's sad to me. But I don't know, the Larry David thing.
But it's perfect though, Brad, because if you're any of these networks, people that like Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm, so people like me, if I didn't pay a lot of attention to politics, I'd be like, oh, cool, I bet he has something funny to say.
But he
about
doesn't.
Trump,
But see, that's the thing that bothers me about it is that we look at him as this great comic, and hey, dude, make me laugh. Don't. You know what I mean? I mean, at least when you listen to if you listen to the even to the point the nightly talk shows. Matter of fact, if you listen to the show that comes off on right after us, Armstrong and Getty, they have a segment of the show where they essentially take all the late night comics and they run the various jokes the late night comics are doing. Okay, the gloves are off with Biden. I mean, if you've heard this lately, a lot of Jimmy Fallon is like, and what's funny about it is they're funny jokes. I mean, to the point where even
they're about his age, I'm sure, right?
Well, they're about all sorts of crazy stuff, about Hunter and stuff like that. But the point being is that even these guys who are very, very, very woke and very much politically connected to the Democrats, even they are finding the humor in what's happening in politics. But yet, once again, that's always been, at least up until the current crop of late-night talk show hosts. You go back to Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson would always have funny lines about whoever was in office. Same thing with Jay Leno. And both of them were equal opportunity offenders. They went after the Dems. They went after the Republicans. You know what I'm saying?
That's for sure, yeah.
And it's gotten to the point where, all you see, on late night TV, up until recently, has been, Trump's terrible. Trump's terrible. He's terrible.
Yeah, and it's different. I mean, when they made fun of George W. Bush, it could be funny. I don't have a problem with it as long as, like you said, Brad, if it makes you laugh, then it's funny. But if it's just mean and it's just this guy's such a jerk, and what's new about it? What's new that they haven't been saying for the last however many years?
Well, I will go on right now saying this, and I know I'll get pushback from some of our listeners, and John may even recoil on this. I called the 2016 election. I called the 2020 election. I mean, I said both times. I said in 2016. I mean, I had people that I called the 2016 election in March of that year when I went to the event when Trump was in town at the Kiel Opera House, where literally 30
the lines were around the blocks.
Yeah, I mean, for a mile, the line was over a mile. I thought to myself, okay, this is groundswell. This is what the flyover. This is what's happening in the flyover country. This is what the East and the West Coast, especially the East Coast media, is missing. I called it in 2020. I'm calling it in 2024. Biden will remain president. The House will flip back to Democrats, and the Senate will stay democratically controlled. So we will have in 2025, from 2025 to 2029, we'll have a Democratic president. He will serve his second term. We'll have a Democratic Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. How's that for? And you want to mark that on your calendar there and see how good I am in 8 or 9 months, right? Or 10 months?
I think we should capture that, and I think we should also, in the immediate term, try to get somebody to run for Secretary of State. Because if nobody's here to count the votes, Brad, if we don't have an election official to count the votes, then none of it really matters, even in a red state.
We have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?